24th, 24th of this month, you have a Viva of upper limb and lower limb. But there is a good news also. The questions which we will ask you during the Viva, we will give you in advance today. Only those questions will be asked. You just have to prepare those upper limb questions and lower limb questions, and it will be a group Viva. There are 25 questions in upper limb. Each one will be asked one question. But you will not know which question. Same as there are 25 questions in lower limb. But the questions are already provided. So you are ready, you can be ready with the answers. Another bad news. On 28th of this month, you have a theory paper. The questions will not be provided in advance. But the good news is, it will be only MCQ paper. Even better news, that MCQ paper you will be attempting at home. But after we send the paper to you on your WhatsApp, whatever is the stipulated time, 1 hour, 1.5 hours, whatever is the time allotted, at that time the MCQ papers you will be answering on your mobile, of course. The entry will stop at the stipulated time. So it's not that suppose we start the paper on Saturday at 1:30 and say the paper is of 60 minutes duration. At 2:30 sharp we will switch off so that you can't access beyond 2:30. So you can't just sit and say, I'll look at one question in the book, search for the answer, then write, then you will not have enough time. 40 seconds per question is the time allotted. We will be gracious enough to give you 60 seconds. In 20 seconds, I am sure you can't look into the book and search for the answers. If you decide between two of you that I will search for 30 questions, you search for the next 30 questions, that will not work, because each one will have different questions on his mobile in different sequence, different direction, options. So you can't just copy one from the other. You might search for the 30 questions, the same 30 questions somebody else has also searched, your partner. Then you will end up without knowing 30% of half the questions you don't know. So the questions are all jumbled, options are also all jumbled. So you can't really work out. You have to know the subject, then only you will be able to answer. But you have the comfort of doing it at home. Okay? With that, we start with the topic for today. The topic is something which other colleges don't teach. You being in Nair, you got the privilege of the topic of today, comparison between upper limb and lower limb. So we'll start with the bones of upper limb and lower limb, then the muscles, then the nerves in that order. The Pectoral girdle is equal to pelvic girdle. Pectoral girdle is equal to pelvic girdle. Clavicle has no equivalent in the lower limb. Clavicle has no equivalent in the lower limb. That means hip bone is equal to scapula. But that's not sufficient. Upper part of glenoid cavity and the coracoid process is equal to ischium. Upper part of glenoid cavity and the coracoid process is equal to ischium. Rest of scapula is equal to ilium. Rest of scapula is equal to ilium. And only the tip of coracoid process is equal to pubis. Only the tip of coracoid process is equal to pubis. That's why the tip of coracoid process, which is a separate epiphysis, is called as atavistic epiphysis, vestigial epiphysis, because it's hardly developed in lower limb. And clavicle was just a strut in the upper limb to keep the shoulders apart, to increase the range of movement of shoulder as compared to that of the hip. Okay? Then three parts of the limbs are called as, you have already learnt it in the embryology sessions, stylopod, zygopod and autopod. The three parts of the free limb is called as stylopod, zygopod, Z-E-U-G-O, zygopod, and autopod. Stylopod consists of one bone. Humerus in upper limb equal to femur in lower limb. Zygopod is same as zygopod, Z-Y-G-O, consists of two bones. In fact, zygote is a fusion of two gametes. Zygo means two. It's also called as zygo. Zygo or zygopod consists of two bones. Radius and ulna in upper limb is respectively equivalent to tibia and fibula in the lower limb. Radius is on the thumb side, which is also called as preaxial side, and since thumb is equivalent to great toe, tibia is on the great toe side, so it's called as preaxial bone. Radius and tibia are preaxial bone, ulna and fibula are postaxial bones. Then autopod is hand and foot. There also the carpals and tarsals are called as mesopodium. Carpals and tarsals are called mesopodium. Metatarsals are called as metapodium. Metatarsals are called as metapodium. Metacarpals and metatarsals, they are called as metapodium. And the phalanges are called as acropodium. Phalanges are called as acropodium. Now let's go a little more details in metacarpals versus metatarsals. In both the sets, there are three bones which are proximal bones. In upper limb, they are called as os radiale, os radiale, os intermedium, os intermedium, and os allare. So in the upper limb they are called as os radiale, os intermedium, os allare. In the lower limb they are called as os tibiale, os intermedium, os fibulare. Os radiale is equal to scaphoid. Os radiale is equal to scaphoid. Os intermedium is equal to lunate. Os allare is equal to triquetral. Pisiform has no equivalent in lower limb, similar to patella has no equivalent in upper limb. Both are sesamoid bones, but they are not homologous of each other. So, scaphoid lunate triquetral. In the lower limb, the os tibiale is equal to talus. Os intermedium of the lower limb is equal to the posterior tubercle of talus. So that again is a vestige. It can be called as atavistic epiphysis, the posterior tubercle of talus. It's a separate bone, lunate in the upper limb, but just a tubercle of talus. And os fibulare is equal to calcaneum. So proximal row of carpals, 3 bones. Middle row of carpals, 4 bones. Distal row of carpals, 5 bones. 3, 4, 5. Where is the middle row of carpals? The 4 bones of the middle row of carpal is called as os centrale. They are all fused with each other. Os centrale. Don't confuse os intermedium with os centrale. Centrale is a middle row. Intermedium is a proximal row. The os centrale of upper limb is the distal part of scaphoid. Os centrale of upper limb is the distal part of scaphoid, which is the one which is spared during fracture of scaphoid, because the blood supply to scaphoid primarily comes from the deep palmar arch. The os centrale of lower limb is navicular. Os centrale of lower limb is called as navicular. The os distale, that means the distal row of carpals, tarsals, are called as os primum, os secundum, os tertium, os quartum, os quintum. The distal row of carpals and tarsals are called as os primum, os secundum, os tertium, os quartum, os quintum. Os primum is in the upper limb is trapezium. In the lower limb is medial cuneiform. Os secundum of upper limb is trapezoid. Secundum of lower limb is intermediate cuneiform. Os tertium is equal to capitate in upper limb and lateral cuneiform in lower limb. Os quartum and quintum have fused in upper limb to form hamate. Os quartum and quintum have fused in lower limb also to form cuboid. And it goes without saying, the 5 metacarpals are equal to 5 metatarsals, and the phalanges are equivalent to phalanges. Just as thumb has only 2 phalanges, great toe also has only 2 phalanges. Other toes have 3 phalanges each. This is about the bony equivalent. Let's now go to the muscles. Deltoid consists of anterior fibers, middle fibers and posterior fibers. The posterior fibers are equal to gluteus maximus. The anterior fibers is equivalent to tensor fasciae lata. The middle fiber of deltoid is the fascia lata connecting tensor fasciae lata and gluteus maximus. So middle fibers of deltoid, which are the primary abductors of the shoulder, they have become just fascia in the lower limb. The rotator cuff muscles, which are deeper to deltoid, are equivalent to gluteus medius and minimus. Now we know supraspinatus is a weak abductor of the shoulder joint and the initiator of the abduction, but gluteus medius minimus, which are equivalent to rotator cuff, are the entire abductors of the hip joint. So just as the middle fibers of deltoid had become a fascia, because deeper to it there are much more powerful gluteus medius minimus, which are equivalent to rotator cuffs, which are the abductors of the hip joint. Adductors are a little more tricky. There is an adductor longus brevis magnus. Adductor longus brevis magnus are equal to the 3 heads of coracobrachialis. Shocking. Coracobrachialis has 3 heads? We thought coracobrachialis is only 1 head. Actually, coracobrachialis is pierced by the musculocutaneous nerve. The part of coracobrachialis anterior to this nerve is adductor longus. The part of coracobrachialis anterior to the musculocutaneous nerve is adductor longus. The part posterior to it is adductor brevis. In some individuals, only in some individuals, there is something called as ligament of Struthers. Struthers. Ligament of Struthers. Now this is connecting a supracondylar spur. There is a bony projection in the lower part of the, just above the medial epicondyle. Just above the medial epicondyle there is sometimes a bony projection pointing upwards, which is called as supracondylar spur. If present, there is a ligament connecting the supracondylar spur to the middle of the humerus. From supracondylar spur to middle of the humerus. This obviously, since it is attached to the same bone, supracondylar spur is part of humerus, middle of the humerus is also part of humerus. So any muscle which is connecting the two cannot be a muscle. It becomes a ligament. This Struthers ligament is equivalent to adductor magnus. The gap between the adductor magnus and femur is called as adductor hiatus, through which femoral artery and nerve enter the popliteal fossa. The gap between adductor magnus and femur is called as hiatus magnus, through which the femoral artery and nerve enters the popliteal fossa. Exactly similar, the gap between Struthers ligament and humerus. The gap between Struthers ligament and humerus, through this hiatus passes median nerve and brachial artery. Through this gap passes median nerve and brachial artery. Remember, Struthers ligament is not present in all individuals, but in some individuals they are present when it will be equivalent to adductor magnus. Sartorius gracilis semitendinosus do not have equivalent in upper limb. The job of Sartorius gracilis and semitendinosus is to hold the three parts of the hip bone together. There is no such thing in upper limb. The quadriceps of the lower limb, which are extensors of the knee joint, is equal to triceps of the upper limb, which is extensor of the elbow joint. Deeper to the quadriceps there lies a muscle called as articularis genu. Deeper to triceps lies articularis cubitus. So articularis genu is equal to articularis cubitus. The biceps and the brachialis are together equivalent to hamstrings, which are flexors of the knee joint, and here they are flexors of the elbow joint. The extensors of the forearm are equal to the extensors of the leg, the anterior compartment muscles. Extensors of forearm are extensors of the leg, which are dorsiflexors. But that requires a greater clarity about the flexors. Pronator teres, which arises from the medial epicondyle and inserts on the preaxial bone, the radius, is a developmental equivalent of popliteus, which arises from the femur and inserted on the preaxial bone, the tibia. The gastrocnemius arises as two heads and inserts singly into the calcaneum, is equivalent to flexor carpi radialis and flexor carpi ulnaris. The difference being the flexor carpi radialis and flexor carpi ulnaris arises as one from the common flexor origin, but inserts separately. Gastrocnemius arises separately, inserts together. The flexors of the upper limb arise commonly and insert separately. The soleus is equal to flexor digitorum superficialis. The soleus is equal to flexor digitorum superficialis. We know that the flexor digitorum superficialis mainly arises from the oblique line on radius, which is the preaxial bone, and flexor digitorum superficialis arises from the soleal line on tibia and partly also from fibula. The soleal line of tibia is equal to oblique line of radius, from where the soleus arises and from where the flexor digitorum superficialis also arises. And deeper to the origin of flexor digitorum superficialis passes the median nerve. Deeper to the origin of flexor digitorum superficialis passes the median nerve. Deeper to the soleus passes the tibial nerve. So they are equivalents. In fact, there is a vestigial muscle in upper limb and lower limb. Plantaris muscle is equal to palmaris longus. Plantaris muscle is equal to palmaris longus. We can't call it as plantaris longus because there is no plantaris brevis. Obviously, it goes without saying that palmaris brevis has no equivalent in lower limb. Palmaris brevis has no equivalent in lower limb because palmaris longus is equal to plantaris. Palmaris brevis, no equivalents. The flexor digitorum profundus goes all the way to the distal phalanges. Similarly, the flexor digitorum longus in lower limb goes to the distal phalanx. Flexor digitorum longus in lower limb goes to the distal phalanx. So they are equivalents of each other. In the sole of the foot, there is plantar aponeurosis arising from calcaneum. There is also a flexor digitorum brevis arising from calcaneum. Flexor digitorum brevis insertion is exactly similar to flexor digitorum superficialis of upper limb. It splits to allow the long tendon to pass through, then gets inserted on the middle phalanx. Exactly similar. The flexor digitorum brevis does. Exactly similar the flexor digitorum superficialis does. But we have already said that flexor digitorum superficialis is equal to soleus. That is in the leg. The flexor digitorum superficialis in the palm is equal to flexor digitorum brevis. What you can say is that the flexor digitorum superficialis of the lower limb, flexor digitorum superficialis equivalent of the lower limb, has got split into two because of the pressure bearing calcaneum. Flexor digitorum superficialis has been split into two because of the pressure bearing calcaneum, the proximal part becoming soleus, the distal part becoming flexor digitorum brevis. Is this point clear? This muscle is split into two only in plantigrade humans. In the digitigrades, this muscle is uninterrupted, continuous, because the heel does not touch the ground in digitigrades. Is this point clear? The other muscles of the foot are comparable to other muscles of the palm. Their names are also similar, except that hallux will be replaced by pollex, like that. There is one muscle on the dorsum of the foot, extensor digitorum brevis. There is no muscle on the dorsum of the palm. So extensor digitorum brevis has no comparable muscle in the palm. In some individuals, they have a muscle on the dorsum of the palm, hand, dorsum of the hand, and that tendon goes to the middle finger. In some individuals, when present, it has the name extensor medius proprius. Extensor medius proprius. If it is present, then that is the equivalent of the extensor digitorum brevis of the foot. If not present, extensor digitorum brevis of the foot has no equivalent in upper limb. There is also a muscle in the foot called as flexor digitorum accessorius. This muscle is present only to straighten the pull of flexor digitorum accessorius is present in the foot, which is only present to straighten the pull of flexor digitorum longus. There has no equivalence in upper limb because the corresponding muscle, flexor digitorum profundus, does not run obliquely. Flexor digitorum longus runs obliquely, so you require a correcting muscle, flexor digitorum accessorius, in the sole of the foot. Because flexor digitorum profundus does not run obliquely in the upper limb, there is no need of any muscle to straighten its pull. It's already straight. The next we discuss is the nerve. The ulnar nerve and the median nerve together represent the tibial nerve. The ulnar nerve and median nerve together represent the tibial nerve, and the radial nerve represents the deep peroneal nerve or deep fibular nerve. We are talking about these nerves only in the forearm and hand. In the proximal part, they are a lot different from each other. There is in addition axillary nerve, there are gluteal nerves, and there are musculocutaneous nerve and all those things. So we are focusing the equivalence only in the forearm and hand. The tibial nerve is equal to median and ulnar nerve, and which supplies the flexor muscles, and the radial nerve is equal to deep fibular nerve, deep peroneal nerve, which supplies the extensor muscles. And the muscles in the hand, whatever is supplied by the median nerve, which is on the thumb side, in the foot, a branch of tibial nerve called medial plantar nerve will supply. Whatever muscles in the hand, the median nerve supplies, which is on the thumb side, the medial plantar nerve, which is on the great toe side, will supply those equivalent muscles of the foot. But most of the muscles of the hand are supplied by ulnar nerve. Most of the muscles of the hand are supplied by ulnar nerve. Most of the muscles of the foot sole are supplied by lateral plantar nerve. Ulnar nerve, which is on the little finger side, is equivalent to lateral plantar nerve, which is on the little toe side. All intraossei in upper limb, without exception, are supplied by ulnar nerve. All intraossei of the foot, without exceptions, are supplied by lateral plantar nerve. The lumbricals in upper limb are shared by 2 by median and 2 by ulnar. The lumbricals of the sole have a different share. It is 1 by medial plantar, 3 by lateral plantar, simply because the axis of the lower limb is second toe, the axis of the hand is third finger. So whatever is on the preaxial side of the third finger, that is first two lumbricals, are supplied by median nerve, and the last two lumbricals are supplied by ulnar nerve. Because the axis of the foot is second toe, only the first lumbrical going to the second toe is supplied by medial plantar. All the remaining are supplied by lateral plantar nerve. And we said there is a muscle called flexor digitorum accessoris in the lower limb, which has no equivalent in the upper limb. Like the rule states, most of the muscles of the foot, sole of the foot, are supplied by lateral plantar nerve. Flexor digitorum accessoris is also supplied by lateral plantar nerve. It's interesting to realize that the deep fibular nerve, also called deep peroneal nerve, has got only one cutaneous supply, that is in the web space between the great toe and second toe, which is called as first web space. Superficial branch of radial nerve in the hand also mainly supply the first web space, dorsal aspect of the first web space. This reminds me of a story of Amar Akbar Anthony. In the beginning of the movie, there is a fight between Amitabh Bachchan and Vinod Khanna. They are fighting inside the tent, and you can't see who is beating up whom. You only hear dishum, 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 dishum. After some time, both of them come out, and you find that Amitabh Bachchan is bruised black and blue all over, and Vinod Khanna is clutching his abdomen. And Amitabh Bachchan gives his famous dialogue, "Sirf ek shot mara, lekin kya solid shot." Exactly similar, the deep peroneal nerve says, "Sirf ek web space supply kiya, lekin kya solid web space." All the other web spaces are of no use. First web space, that's the one. And that is supplied by the deep peroneal nerve. So that's about the nerve. Next we go about with the blood vessels. It might seem very simple, but it's not as simple as it seems. The axillary brachial nerve complex